All right. Welcome to AWS reInvent 2017. My name is Dallas Willett. I'm a database engineer on our AWS RDS for SQL Server service that we provide. I'm going to be doing a presentation today with Hugo from OutSystems. And just as a show of hands, how many of you are running SQL Server databases in the cloud today? Okay. How many SQL Server databases overall? I'm assuming that's probably everybody. And then how many of you are running in RDS today? Okay, a good amount. So our presentation today is you're going to hear from me for a little bit to give you, for those of you that aren't familiar with RDS and our managed service, a brief introduction into what we do in RDS and how we can help manage your SQL Server databases. And then Hugo is going to talk about his company, and it'd be nice for you guys to hear what they go through, how they use RDS, that kind of thing. And then that'll probably be about 20 minutes, last 20 minutes before Q&A. I'm going to go over some of the new features that we've launched in RDS SQL Server. So for those of you that are currently using SQL Server, what have we been up to in the last 12 months or so? And then finally, we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. So if you have questions, keep track of them, write them down. We'll make sure that we can answer those at the end. So RDS is a managed database service. What we try to think of is we do all the heavy lifting, the undifferentiated heavy lifting that you normally would have to do if you're managing SQL Server instances and databases yourself on-prem. So this is all the backup and recovery, changing the infrastructure, patching, upgrading, that kind of thing. RDS supports more than just SQL Server. So we know a lot of customers that come to us that do run SQL Server, but then they also have Oracle or MySQL, other open source engines, or they've even dabbled in started to use our Amazon Aurora engines, MySQL and Postgres compatible. So the nice part is once you get used to using RDS for SQL Server, the same sort of API calls and consoles you can use to manage your other databases if you have those. So for SQL Server specifically, we support these different editions along with a couple different license type. So if you have license mobility and you're bringing your own license, we support that. We also can sell you the SQL Server license when you come to RDS as well. We just added support for SQL Server 2017. We'll talk about that a little bit more at the end of the presentation. So again, we try to think of RDS as a managed service doing all of the things that you would normally have to do yourself when you run your databases. And if we do that for you, then it frees up your time to go spend with your development teams, doing things that are more beneficial for your end customers, innovating on behalf of them, differentiating your products, your applications, frees up your time to go do that stuff. The click of a button with an API call, or you can use CloudFormation templates. You can launch new SQL Server instances, back them up, restore them, add encryption, add high availability. You can sync them up to your Active Directories and do Windows authentication. There's a wide range of things that we do within RDS that make your life simpler. So that's a general introduction to RDS. And what I want to do now is hand it over to Hugo, who's going to talk to you about his journey into the cloud.
Okay, thank you, Dallas. So moving on, a bit about OutSystems. The same question applies. Who in the audience knows what is low-code or knows OutSystems? The ones that work in OutSystems do. Okay. Let me make just a brief presentation about OutSystem. What is OutSystem? What is also low-code? So, OutSystem is the #1 low-code enterprise platform that builds enterprise-grade web and mobile applications. That actually is running on AWS. What we do is we have a product that has a full visual stack of development that manages all the full management lifecycle of your application throughout the environments, and also is able to deploy pixel-perfect enterprise-grade at any device, meaning web, mobile native, you name it. And basically, we have some pillars. The mainly ones is that it's a low-code application that is fast, it is secure, it is easy to learn, it's a visual environment, and also it's very easy to integrate with everything. From AWS services, we are built on top of AWS services, but the end goal is just to build your unique experience, your unique application, and enable you through your path of digital transformation. So, we love our platform, and the customers love us back. And this is for Gartner Peer Insights, and we have more than 180 customers that put up quotes like this: low code is a perfect fit for mission-critical enterprise applications. So, enough of OutSystems. We have a booth. Just come and meet us at the expo, and we can show you how easy it is to build your enterprise-grade applications on top of AWS. So, moving on. And this is the part where OutSystem and AWS meets. I'm going through our customer journey. We have been a product for about 10 years, but we only did the cloud move in 2013 actually. Okay, thank you. And basically, as of now, we are leveraging a lot of AWS services. We run about 26 different AWS services, but the main core ones are the usual suspects, from VPC, EC2, RDS, Elastic Load Balancers, and of course S3. And we have a big global infrastructure. This global infrastructure actually is a good match for OutSystems. And the global presence of AWS from day one was one of the primary motives we went to AWS. We need to support customers in 43 countries, over 22 verticals. We have more than 180 global partners and more than 125,000 community members. So, as you can see in the map, we support 6 regions that fairly match our presence in the globe in terms of our customers. So, moving on specifically to RDS. We started the service in 2013, and we're just doubling the numbers of running instances. We are now running over 800 production workloads on RDS, and 85% of those are SQL servers. Our product is not SQL server bound. We support other stacks, but our customers choose primarily SQL server. And in the past 2 years, we're really entering the hockey stick growth of the company and of the infrastructure by that means. So, this has been quite a journey, and we have actually a fair big infrastructure, but we have a fairly small team of engineers to manage the cloud operations. And we have a 24/7 operation, but we do that by restricting the control of what our customers have over the infrastructure, meaning we run a full set of around 52 managed services, only 15 are database related, and the majority of the services are fully self-serviced by an application that we give to our customers. If you can see on the right screen, you can see that OutSystem is trying to get the sweet spot between total control that AWS gives. If a customer has control over the AWS infrastructure, he has full control of the infrastructure stack. On the other side, we have vendors like Salesforce that doesn't give the control back to the customer. It's a full product that they control, and they control the infrastructure. We're trying to get in the middle where we get back some kind of control to the customer over the infrastructure, but we retain the heavy lifting of the manage of those 52 services. So the fun fact is we have no traditional DBAs, meaning we are a product company. What we really do is have R&D fine-tune and put the maintenance plan, the performance tuning into the product, and that then cross-apply that tuning and that maintenance plans to the entire infrastructure. Okay. So this was 5 years ago, but from day one we believe in RDS, meaning we have our product, we have our own share of work to do and innovation to do on our product. We from day one believed in RDS, in AWS in general, and in automation. The RDS service, like Dallas said, is a fully managed, reliable, and secure. So with those out of our radar, we really have time to go through our product and innovate our product. But the core thing here is what makes this good is the great relationship that we have with AWS. And this relationship makes that we have amazing support from RDS team and from AWS support in general. They incorporate many of our requests, feature requests, and they always deliver new functionality over time. Meaning the product that we knew 5 years ago is not the same product that we have right now, for sure. So one of our themes, and I'm going through this security thing because RDS is the base and the core for this. We've been working very hard in the past 2 years to have a secure SOC 2 Type 2 compliant offer in the cloud and support some ISO standards, and also we are proudly members of the CSI Alliance. And this is all because we believe our customers have to have the speed from low code, but with no barriers to achieve this. And security, it was a big barrier back then, and now with this offer, in the public offer, we can assure our customers of these compliances. So I'm going now in a bit of architectures just to show off where RDS is on the entire architecture of OutSystems. And basically, I'm going to present what we call Sentry. It's a public offer that has been just launched. And this is basically a map of the entire infrastructure of one customer. We have isolation between every customer by VPC and by accounts. But on the same account, we have multiple VPCs isolating environments. RDS comes as a core data service for OutSystem, and we have a set of, apart from EC2 of course, we have a set of services that we use from AWS, SKS, S3, CloudWatch, just to push out logs for forensics, EDS, EPS, and correlation in third vendor software, basically. And this is a map of one customer. For example, it may be simpler. It really depends of the scalability of their infrastructure that they can manage in our own product. But we also use our own dog food, meaning we have the same product, the same infrastructure, and that same infrastructure controls the global infrastructure, and we use AWS and our own product to develop this. Of course, we have in this special infrastructure a set of management bits and pieces with software that really enables us to manage and patch the machines and so on. So this is about it. Okay, moving on. Dallas is going to announce in a bit more about features, but I'm going through these specific projects that we are working on that rely on RDS. One of them is scale storage automation, meaning we had a limitation on RDS SQL Server, and for that we over-provisioned storage for our customers to assure that they won't hit any limitation. So we have huge databases that are unused, and with the storage automation and scalability, we can now move them to smaller GP2 instances and just go through the process of automating this for the entire infrastructure. This affects many, many customers, hundreds of customers. And we're trying to do this with the minimal downtime possible. Another project that is a cool project that goes to compliance, basically, it's what we internally call Vault Account. We are just trying to make sure that on a major disaster, we have the guarantee that we have our customer data secure, the integrity and the confidentiality. So we are doing cross accounts snapshots for an external account as it's fully automated, meaning no human access can be made to that account. And for that, this is necessary mainly to assure that in a security flaw that anyone compromises one single account, we cannot lose customer data, basically. This all is to achieve compliance, basically. And the next year is, again, going to be about compliance. This has been a thread internally, and we're working very hard to GDPR. It's a regulation in Europe that has to be ready around May next year. And with that stepstone, we can then go through HIPAA compliance, a fairly important compliance here in the United States, but it's the same sort of compliance that GDPR, the same pillars are in place. HIPAA, RDS is a HIPAA compliant service, so it's part of our job, has already been done by the RDS team, and that it's great. So, in a nutshell, what has been our experience with RDS? They really support our growth, meaning we have to have time to develop our own product. They do all the heavy lifting of the infrastructure, so we can just move on and develop our product and leave the infrastructure to the guys who know how to do infrastructure. And that is through continuous OutSystem and AWS development teams, meaning collaboration between the teams is a core factor that enable us to just concentrate on innovating our own products. And all this innovation in the end is just to bring value to our customers. And a clear example of this is the Gartner quadrants. We, in the Mobile App Developer in 2015, we didn't exist, basically. We had made lots of work the last year in P10, Platform 10, where we were recognized as visionaries, but our end goal in 2017 was to become the leaders of this quadrant. And by this is getting low code in the heads of the people and just bringing more value to our customers. So I suppose, Dallas, it's your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugo. All right. So new features. So what have we been doing for the last 12 months? We obviously like to collaborate with customers, like to hear what the sharp edges are on RDS, how we can alleviate those sharp edges. Probably the number one thing that most everybody has been asking for recently is scale storage on RDS SQL Server. So in the past, you had to figure out how much storage you wanted, and you had to provision that amount, and you could not change it. And so just recently, we've launched the ability to do scale storage, and it is an online operation, and you'll notice there's a little asterisk there. I'll get to what that asterisk is. But this allows now you as a customer to go to, basically it brings SQL Server into parity with some of the other RDS engines that we have that have had scale storage for a long time. We also announced that you can go up to 16 terabytes just recently as well. So what is that asterisk? The asterisk is, there's a couple limitations. One of them comes from EBS, which is when you issue a scale storage command to RDS SQL Server, the instance will go into a modifying state, and then for a period of at least 6 hours after that, it'll go into a state called storage optimizing. And during that time period, you're not allowed to do another scale storage operation until that one completes. So hopefully you're not trying to do scale storage every hour. If you are, bump it up a little bit so that you can stay within that. You don't have to do it until every 6 hours. The other big limitation is that scale storage does require that underneath the covers, we're running off of one EBS volume on RDS. So RDS is built on top of all of the AWS components that you might be familiar with. You guys could go out and build your own RDS if you wanted to out of EC2, S3, EBS. Some of our RDS instances that were created a long time ago, or if you created instances that used magnetic storage. How many of you still use magnetic storage? A few. All right. Hopefully everybody's off onto SSDs. Much better product. But some of the older instances and some of the configurations that we had in RDS, we ended up putting multiple EBS volumes together to get you the performance that you wanted, or we thought that we needed to do to meet the demands of your particular instances. So a few instances are not going to be able to go through the scale storage. You can use the AWS CLI command for describe valid DB instance modifications. And that should show you whether you can go through the scale storage operation for your particular instance. Or if you're used to using the AWS console, the ability to change how much storage you have on your instance will be grayed out if that particular instance is not allowed. So this is a little bit of an unfortunate side effect of some of the previous decisions that we had made in the past. But for the vast majority, for all new instances, especially new instances that are running on GP2 or PIOps, IO1, you won't run into this particular limitation. If you do, your real only answer in that regard is to migrate your data to a new SQL Server instance. You could use our native backup restore. You might use our AWS database migration service, something along those lines to get your data from one SQL Server instance into another one. So I just wanted to show you some of the error messages that you might get if you try to do a SQL Server operation and it's not allowed. So the top one is the command to modify the DB instance. The one below that is if it's within that 6-hour time frame that we were talking about. You cannot modify the storage for this particular instance. Oh, other way around. The bottom one is for the 6 hours. The middle one there is if maybe you have more than one EBS volume on your particular RDS instance. Some of the other things that we've launched recently, it seems like we've launched everything in the last month or two. We now have support for R4 instance types. So R4s are the large memory instance types. They have a 1 to 8 gigabyte ratio, CPU to gigabytes of memory ratio. In the R3s, you could go up to an 8XL. In the R4s, you can now go up to a 16XL. And like most of our new versions of instance classes that come out, the next generation is more performant and at the same price point or lower. So if you're on an R3, look into an R4. You might be able to get a little bit better performance and or save some money. The M4s before went up to a 10XL. EC2 announced a while ago the availability of an M4 16XL, so now we support that in RDS SQL Server as well as a couple of the new larger T2s, which are the burstable compute platform. New versions of the SQL Server engine. So SQL Server 2017 just came out. We support that. 2016 SP1 CU5 came out recently. Those are pretty big deals. The one caveat that we have today with SQL Server 2017 is you can launch a new instance in SQL Server 2017. We're waiting on one bug fix to be able to do the upgrade to that. We expect that to be out shortly. A couple other new things. So license included, we have a lot of customers that come to us. They either don't have any existing licenses that they can bring to AWS, or they just want to, but the convenience of getting their license with us. We've expanded that, especially for Enterprise Edition. Our multi-AZ feature today, how many people here are familiar with the multi-AZ features that we have? A few. So multi-AZ is our high availability feature. Today that is SQL Server mirroring. SQL Server mirroring is obviously deprecated by Microsoft. The new version of that is going to be always on availability groups. Today we run SQL Server mirroring. Click of a button, an API call, we will set up the mirroring for you and do all of the monitoring of the database and fail you over. So all of that heavy lifting is done for you. Click of a button. We now support that in EU Central and Frankfurt. Windows authentication, we talked a little bit, expanded that into a couple more new regions. For compliance reasons, a lot of people need to have encryption over the wire. And so with RDS Parameter Groups, now you can actually set a new custom parameter, RDS Force SSL, and that will make sure that every connection to the database is only coming over TLS SSL. Hugo was mentioning that one of their next projects is going to be HIPAA compliance. And so we were We now have support for HIPAA within RDS SQL Server. So you can, if you have we have a business associates agreement, we can sign that. If you have that signed already, you're already included. You can start using SQL Server with your HIPAA compliant data. There is a couple things that you need to do in order to actually have your SQL Server database be HIPAA compliant. You need encryption at rest, you need encryption over the wire, and you need some additional auditing. And so that's where the FedRAMP_HIPAA RDS parameter comes into play. So that'll turn on some additional auditing within the RDS SQL Server database so that you can meet compliance for HIPAA. For those of you that need auditing for some other reason, you could also turn this on. You don't have to be necessarily going for HIPAA compliance in order to access some of this additional auditing within the database. We've had a few customers ask about that. We like to save our customers money. In addition to rolling out new instance types that are cheaper and more performant. This was one of the most highly requested features for a while. This is really good for your dev test workloads. This does not work on production workloads that are using multi-AZ. So for most production workloads, we recommend that you run in a high availability mode, which would be multi-AZ. For dev test, what this allows you to do is it allows you to stop your instance overnight or over the weekend when you're not using it. And then what we do is we detach the volumes from the EC2 instance, the compute node, and then we terminate the compute node, but we keep the EBS volumes around. And then you can then programmatically restart it in the morning. If you don't tell us to restart it, it will automatically restart 7 days later. We'll just spin up a new EC2 instance, attach your volumes to it, and then your SQL Server database is back up and running. So you no longer pay for the compute resources while your instance is stopped. All you pay for is the EBS volume, which is still around. This is not a substitute for longer term, so we did put a cap on 7 days for this. And what we expect customers to do is if you don't need your database for longer than that, then you don't really want to be paying for your storage as well. And so we recommend that you do a terminate with a final snapshot. That will free up the database instance and the storage. You'll no longer be paying for that. You'll have a backup in your account. And then when you want to restore, when you want to bring it back up a month later, 2 weeks later, whatever it is, you just do a restore. It'll launch a new instance and a new EBS volume, and then we'll restore that EBS volume for you. So a little bit longer to do that, but for longer term downtimes, that's what we recommend. All right, and that was new features. We do have time now for questions. People have questions? There's microphones.
Sorry. Can you talk about the difference between running SQL Server on a dedicated server versus running it in RDS on AWS?
Sure. So the question was difference between running a dedicated server on EC2 or even on-prem, and what's that difference between that and running it on RDS? So the biggest difference you'll probably notice right away is you won't have access to the server. So you don't have the ability to actually log into the Windows server and you don't have higher elevated privileges like sysadmin within your SQL Server database. Other than that, we do, if you need to get access to certain metrics like performance metrics on the host, you can get that. It would just be in a different way. So we have a feature called enhanced monitoring where you can get OS level statistics down to the second, and then be able to put alarms on that in something like CloudWatch. The other probably big difference would be that you don't have the ability to install your own software on the SQL Server instance or the Windows host itself. So if you're running something like SSRS or SSIS today on the same host, that won't work in RDS SQL Server today.
In terms of performance and failures, I mean, I've heard stories about, like, what is it, noisy neighbor problem?
Okay, so the difference between then, like, when you have control of the entire host versus if you're on a virtualized environment and you might have a noisy neighbor, is that kind of your question?
Right.
So if you choose an instance type that is the largest in any of the classes, you basically are consuming the entire physical host, and so you won't have that problem. In terms of other noisy neighbor problems, all of the compute resources, the network resources, all of that is not over-provisioned in any way. So there's, if you launch a 4 vCPU machine, you are the only one that has access to that 4 vCPU machine. And if you're sending out IOPS to, IOs to the storage system, you have a dedicated slice of however much of the instance is available. So a lot of those metrics are available. EC2 publishes those on the AWS website. You can go look at those and see right size your instance for that. So a lot of those noisy neighbor problems kind of go away. One difference would be on the I/O that you choose. If you choose GP2, it's a cheaper offering. It's a burstable storage type. That is over-provisioned, and that's why we can offer it at a lower price. If you need predictable, I want 20,000 IOPS, 5,000 IOPS, whatever it is, we suggest that you go with IO1 storage type, and then you get provisioned IOPS that don't have that problem. Okay. Question?
Yeah, so thank you. You talked a little bit about, it sounds like custom applications that are able to tie into SQL Server and RDS. Can you talk a little bit about other systems like SharePoint, where Microsoft product tend to work with SQL Server if you're setting it up on an EC2 or on-prem? How does that work if you're looking to at least get the SQL Server side offloaded to an RDS type of solution?
So there are certain applications that the question was, what third-party type of applications or pre-built applications work with RDS SQL Server. There's definitely certain types of applications that work straight out of the box with SQL Server. Some of them, I believe, SharePoint should have you come up afterwards and talk to one of our product people. I don't believe that one works directly out of the box. So it's a little bit of try it out and see if you can get it to work. The one caveat I will say is that if it requires any sort of software to be installed and running on the same host, then it's not going to work. If all that the third-party application needs is the SQL Server endpoint and port, then typically there's not a problem unless it's like also needs to have sysadmin or
Well, I
other
mean, can you set up specific accounts, systems accounts for different services? That would be the only extension outside of you don't install
So in the
anything.
Windows services as
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
Yeah. So that would be another limitation that does not work on RDS SQL Server.
Thank you.
Question about the architecture. Are you running Windows Server Core or Desktop Edition? And follow up to that, I saw 2017. Are you looking at the Linux distribution, or is that interesting at all to Amazon?
Okay. So if I understand your question correctly, it's what is the operating system that we're running for RDS SQL Server underneath the covers? So today that is one of a couple flavors of Windows Server. I think it's either Windows Server 2008 or 2012, depending on the version of SQL Server that we run. Nice part about SQL Server or coming to RDS is you don't really have to worry about that. We take care of that for you and do all the patching for that if there needs to be any sort of patching. And then your second question was around?
On the first one, is it core or desktop experience? So there's sort of two variants, right?
Yeah.
It's available since 2008.
So I don't know the answer to that one, but if you come up afterwards, I can answer that one.
Okay.
And then your second question was?
2017 was released with Linux support as well.
So so Microsoft announced that they have Linux support now, which is really cool. Today, we've built our product based on the previous versions. We are looking at possibly doing a Linux offering, and there might be some variations and different functionality that we could provide through that. Maybe also some difference in costs that could be passed on to you guys. We don't have plans at that. We have nothing announced about any plans related to that. If that's something that's interesting to you, we'd love to talk to you about it and see if you guys are interested.
It's the cost.
Yeah, it's the cost. Okay.
Thank you.
So I've got two questions here, basically. The first question is basically around encryption at rest. Is there any plans to provide support for SQL native encryption support? And the second question is around multi-region HA read replicas.
Okay.
Any plans around that?
Okay. So SQL Server native encryption, is that the always-on encrypted?
Yes.
Okay. So we do support always-on encrypted today. I think it came out with SQL Server 2016, if I'm remembering correctly. And so those versions that do support always-on encrypted will work with RDS SQL Server. The second question was around high availability offering or read replica support across regions.
Yes.
So as I talked about before, we run mirroring today. That's deprecated. The replacement for that is always-on availability groups. And so always-on availability groups do have the option of running in a cross-region type of configuration. And so that is something that we're definitely looking at.
Okay. So I'm just thinking scenario of a DR situation that could fail over across regions as well.
So you
Right now
would
it's
also
limited.
want that to be an automated
Yes.
failover
Yes,
situation?
exactly.
We should talk about that afterwards.
Okay.
So I'd love to understand your use case a little bit more.
Are there challenges with 3-part and 4-part names in the migration
Challenges with 3-part and 4-part names
in like stored procedures?
in store procedures. That I don't know about. I guess what I would say is give me your contact information. I can go back to one of the other engineers who does a little bit more in that area. Ask him and follow up with you and let you know.
Okay. Another question is, are there any tools for actually aiding in migrating?
Yeah, so tools in aiding and migrating. We do have the database migration service, as well as a similar tool in that group called the schema conversion tool. The schema conversion tool is more for if you're doing a hybrid type migration from some other to SQL Server or SQL Server to something else. The database migration service, though, is our way of doing logical replication to be able to get your databases from on-prem into something like RDS SQL Server or into AWS if you wanted to. All right. Thank you very much.